welcome to lucky episode 13 of the second series powered by Netball UK. Now, we've been having some glorious weather over here in England, but woke up this morning and that's not the case. What's it like where you are, Mags and Sarah?
Moist,
yeah.
nice.
That is, do you know what? You can tell Mags has been baking cakes with this terminology, can't you?
I was like, oh God.
That is up there in one of the top 5 worst words in the British language. What have you both been doing to keep yourselves busy?
I've had some new fencing put around the garden to keep the nut in, so he can't get out. So the old wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off.
Nice. And Mags, have you baked any cakes? What was your treat for Tuesday?
Tuesday's treat was Mars bar chocolate brownies.
Oh, Mags, what are you doing to us? Did it have Mars bar chunks in it?
Absolutely.
Oh, Mags, I can't cope with that.
It's one of those when it sticks to the roof of your mouth and you're...
Oh, they're the best. They are the best. Oh, yeah, the claggy ones where you really have to work for them. Yes, man. Sorry, we're in for a treat when normality resumes.
I know, I was going to say, she does all this when she never sees us.
I know. We'll be expecting it,
season 1.
You'll get shot bought when we're back together.
I know, yeah. That is your Cadbury's finger.
Yes.
That's it, won't have time.
And Sarah, what about you? Because you were going on a bike ride last week, weren't you?
Yeah, that didn't happen. It was a bit hot. It was a bit hot. I was going to say I'm a fair weather biker, but not too fair. Like, it can't be raining, can't be too hot. It's got to be just a bit like Goldilocks with this bike riding at the minute.
Sorry, do you mean you're just not really a biker?
It's probably a fair assessment, yeah.
What have you been getting up to over the last week then?
What have I been doing? Not a lot, to be honest. Been trying to do a bit of exercise, do some work, do a bit of sunbathing. Yeah,
that's about it. Sunbathing, I like it, topping up the tan. Right then, well, some very exciting news to start the podcast off with. Last month we ran a competition for you and your whole team to win a pair of Asics professional double F black netball shoes with your name printed on them for when you can all play together again. Now, we had hundreds of entries for this and they've all been counted. And the winner is, drum roll please, ladies. Layla Callahan from Hyde Park Netball Club. Well done. Now listen to this, because Layla was very clever with her entry. She said, "We are really done with lockdown and can't Haythornthwaite to be back on the court. Let's keep COVID at bay, man, and get ready with these new trainers that we really hearten."
Oh,
very
smart,
clever.
Excellent.
All my favourite players in there.
Thought you might like that one, Sarah. Congratulations, Layla, to you and your teammates. Now then, it's been a big week for netball with good news and bad news coming in equal measure, and we're here to have a go at dissecting it all for you. So here's what is coming up. With some youngsters going back to school and PE lessons likely to look very different, we're going to discuss how grassroots clubs can stay motivated, what drills they can do remotely, and how coaches can keep in touch. The dust has, of course, settled on the announcement that the Superleague will not return until 2021. However, days after England Netball revealed the disappointing news, the UK government said that elite sport would be allowed again from June the 1st, including close contact training. Did the decision come too soon? But first up, we'll start with the exciting news that Super Netball has a start date and that players have gone back to training together for the first time in weeks. Now, our special guest this week knows the world's top league better than anyone, as she currently plays for Giants and has played down under since 2012. It's only England Roses shooter Jo Harten. Hi, Jo.
Hi everyone.
I realise whenever we greet anyone onto the show, we all wave, but if you're just listening and you can't see us, you just think there's complete silence and we're not excited to have you here, which of course we are. Now, Jo's got a little dog that's desperate for its tea, so we're not going to keep you too long, Jo. But first off, how excited are you that the wait is over, netball's coming back in Australia? How does it feel to finally have a date of August the 1st, that target to work towards?
Yeah, it's so nice to be able to train and have like a purpose we're training for now. Obviously, as like professional athletes, we didn't really stop training over kind of the lockdown period out here in Australia, but it did get quite hard, not knowing when, you know, we're going to start, if we were going to have a season, like what we're training towards. So yeah, to have that August 1st start date is really exciting. We had our first kind of group session back with the Giants girls today, and it's just so nice to train alongside, my teammates.
What was that like? Because, you know, we've heard that now, you know, you can have sort of group training. Can you just talk us through what that experience was like? What happened?
Well, yeah, like we'd been training individually or in twos, and we weren't really allowed to kind of do anything more than that. And then today we had our first gym session. So we're actually split into 3 groups of 5, our team, and we're kind of rotating through different blocks. But yeah, it just means a lot, because, you know, when you're doing your bench press and you're really, really weak like me, and you're struggling, and it's actually like about to suffocate you, someone can actually lift that bar up off of you, and it just means
with
so
one
much
finger.
Sorry, big guns.
But how do you feel about, because obviously we know the Super League isn't coming back until 2021. How do you feel, looking across over here, do you feel for the girls that aren't going to get that opportunity?
Yeah, it absolutely sucks. Midway through, or, you know, the start of the season for the Super League, and just kind of when netball in England was really starting to like gain some traction and like momentum, and then like the plugs pulled on the season. And I think it's a real shame, because, yeah, like I said, momentum, you know, for female sport, and, you know, definitely the Super League was picking up, and to have that kind of stripped away from you when you're in the middle of something is a really awful feeling. So I really do feel for the girls. I know the English girls will have some kind of Roses program probably to fall back on. But for those girls, the Super League, you know, is their main source of netball. It is a real shame. My heart does go out to them. I know safety has to come first in terms of public protocol and, you know, the help of the nation. But I just feel like there might have been a way to just hold out a bit longer. I mean, I'm not over in England, but yeah, it does feel like a bit of a sticky situation.
And for you, obviously, you opted not to come back to England. What was it like seeing how COVID-19 was affecting us over here in the UK while you were over there?
Yeah, it was such a strange experience, because I was speaking to a few of the English girls as kind of news was breaking about border closures, and, you know, I guess the depth of, you know, the pandemic was starting to unfold. And to be honest, I didn't really ever consider coming back home, because I do feel like, you know, my life and my home is here in Sydney. But to see kind of the devastation that the pandemic's caused for the UK is really, really sad. And you just I felt very lucky and kind of safe over in Australia, that, you know, it wasn't as bad here. We still had lots of restrictions and all that kind of thing, but to see how people were living in the UK and how everyone's lives were turned upside down was just really not a nice feeling.
What were those restrictions like over there for you? How did you cope in what seems to be referred to as ISO over there?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had a period of isolation where we were allowed out. I think we were allowed to exercise and go out kind of close to home. We didn't have any like time limits or anything like put on that for us in our exercise, so we were lucky in that aspect. But for me, I took it quite seriously. I tried not to break those rules, and I really tried just to stay at home, do my bit, not socialise or mingle with anyone outside of my household. And, you know, I felt like Australia really jumped on board. We're an outdoor nation over here, living by the beaches and things like that in Sydney, and I feel like people did miss that for a certain period. But kind of, I think it was a harsh 2-week period, and then it started to open up again, and people were back exercising at the beach and doing all things good, and it's slowly starting to unravel again, which is really nice to kind of enjoy that freedom again now.
Sarah and Max, how nice just 2 weeks of that sound. Like, bear in mind how long we've done now. 2 weeks, you know, it'd be a bit of a novelty almost, wouldn't it? You know, we're sat over here looking at that, the rain's pouring down, and we're basically, I mean, you'll know, won't you, Jo, that the rules have changed slightly over here. You know, we can meet 6 people outside of our household and stuff now, and some non-essential shops have been reopened, but it is very much still, you know, there's no real going out. There's obviously no pubs are open. There's nothing like that, and they've actually resorted back. You'll have probably seen this, Sarah and Mags, and yourself, Jo, to sort of shutting some of the beaches because they've been such a mess, because people have flocked there so much. I think we're all just desperate to kind of get to where you guys are. But for sort of professional sports people, it must have been a difficult time, and it must still be a difficult time trying to train with all these restrictions in place. So what kind of things were you doing to keep yourself motivated and to keep yourself fit and healthy?
Yeah, like it was really tough. I knew motivation was going to kind of waver throughout the period, because we obviously didn't know how long or if we were even going to have a season. So I started off by training at home, just had an agility ladder down on the downstairs deck, and we're doing bodyweight exercises just to keep that training going. We definitely found that kind of any household group training that we could do helped with motivation, so you weren't just going at it by yourself. We're lucky in the fact that Giants kept us motivated with programs all throughout the isolation period. So we've got a special app where it just gets downloaded straight to your phone. So there was kind of no excuse, like the material was there. We had some equipment, so we just kind of got to it. But I definitely felt like my motivation went about, I guess it was about 6 weeks ago now. Just not knowing if we were training for any purpose. That was the thing. Like, I love exercise and I love, playing games and sport and stuff, but just going to the gym every day without knowing if it was actually for any reason was pretty tough.
And what would you say to anyone over here who now kind of might feel like without the Super League, maybe their purpose has been stripped a little bit?
I think probably for me, it's like sport will always restart, and, it is high on a lot of people's agendas. And I think that's what I kind of came around to thinking, is that we will get back there eventually. It might not be this year, it might not be this month, but it will come back. So keeping that in the back of your mind is always a good thing. But also training for yourself, like training to be kind to yourself, really helped me. I know after a good intense session and you get the endorphins and you feel like, kind of half on top of the world again. So I think training to be kind to yourself, to give yourself that good uplifting feeling is what should be at the forefront of people's minds right now.
Yeah, I like that. Good advice, that, Jo. I like it. Now, Super Netball is set to run in full until November. Now, that's come at the expense of the Quad Series. How will this affect England and South Africa, who will now not likely get competitive netball again this year, do you reckon?
It's a real shame that the Quad Series has been cancelled. I know England Netball had really intense plans for the international period. It's obviously a couple of years out from the Commonwealth Games, and then the next World Cup comes around like in the blink of an eye. So I know that Jess Thirlby was really wanting to get more games under the Roses belt. And I think it's probably going to impact in a way of, you can train as much as you want, but I think when you on the international stage in front of crowds against the best opposition in the world, it really does, that's where your learning comes. So they'll be super, super keen to get back out on the court in some shape or form, as close to 2020 as possible, and hopefully it can happen at the later end of the year.
Absolutely. And Jo, I'll throw to Sarah and Mags in a second to ask you any questions that I'm sure they've got. But what advice would you give as well for any young shooters that are practicing at home at the minute?
I've done a couple of videos on Instagram to give some of my advice. I think for me, it's just practice the scenarios that happen in a game. So when I was a shooter growing up, I didn't just stand and shoot under the goal, because you don't just do that in a game. I always practice receiving a pass from someone, or trying to turn and dodge and things like that, and then shooting. So I think for any netballers out there at home that don't have someone to practice with, a wall can be your best friend. The harder you throw the ball into the wall, the harder it comes back, and you can work on all sorts of things in isolation. Why don't you refine your own skills, so when you do get back into club or competitive netball, you'll be a boss on the court.
Yes.
Jo had no friends growing up. It was just her and a netball.
That's why she's got this nailed.
She didn't need friends. She was going to make it.
I told myself, every chess pass, you will play for England. You will play for England.
Sarah and Max, do you have any questions for Jo before we let her feed the dog?
Who's going to win the Super Netball, Jo? Apart from Giants, obviously.
Oh, I was going to say, me and my new Giants hoodie, we're repping because we're going hard for the
merchandise available online.
I don't know. Like, it's hard to see now, because some clubs, you had a bit of vision on them at the early stages of pre-season before COVID, and now obviously there's been this kind of massive interruption. So it'll be interesting to see how teams come back and bounce back from this. You'd always bet on the Lightning being a really strong, solid contender for a final spot. I know, like, I joke, but like we want to be back in finals this year. And then I think someone like Adelaide, they could be a dark horse. They've got a new shooter in Lanice from South Africa, and they've obviously got like a really strong defensive end. So I wouldn't count them out either.
And Joan, without wanting to be too intrusive, I mean, the house that you're living in now, do you share it with other athletes, or are you there on your own?
No, I've moved away from the athlete living. I lived with other athletes, I reckon, for 9 years. And it's a pretty intense experience. I've done the whole play netball, bring netball home. Like, I just wash my hands of it now. Like, as soon as netball's done, I like to go home, feed the dog, have a glass of red wine, and relax.
I did actually tell you, don't bother coming on if the dog wasn't here, and you've not brought the dog.
Yeah. So Jo, you've been in isolation then, on your own?
Oh no, I've still got a few other people in the house, but they're non-netball related, so
perfect.
We can bounce off each other in other ways.
Than netball.
Absolutely, it's the way forward.
Jo, oh, sorry, Mags. I was going to just ask to see the dog, but go on.
Oh, no. I think we can do that as well. It's always nice to see the dogs, isn't it?
He's locked up before he gets to eat.
Oh.
I know, hang on. Like, he's locked up. He had chicken. Like, I prepare him, like, the finest roast chicken, like, dried out snacks. So he had a few of those. I put him in his crate, which he needs to do anyway because he's practicing.
Jo, you've fallen for Sarah's bait there. You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you, Sarah? What were you going to say, Mags?
I was just going to say, congratulations on the captaincy. And, I think that's a huge honour, especially when you were voted for that spot by your peers. As captain, have you had any special role through this COVID time with the girls, keeping them going, motivated?
Yeah, I think it's all been a bit of a whirlwind, like being named captain and had a couple of games, and then we're into kind of isolation period. And I can honestly say it's been one of the most stressful leadership positions I've ever had. Not knowing if there was a league. I sit on the Australian Netball Players Association as well. So every Thursday we'd be on calls that go for 2 or 3 hours trying to like nut out if we're going to get a league, and then feeding that back to the playing group as well. It has been tiring at times. I've been on Zoom 2 or 3 times a week, but the girls have been really motivated. They're such a good group, and kind of they took everything in their stride, any feedback. And I think for me, I was just trying to look after my own backyard, stay positive in myself, and I think everyone's done the same. And now we're back together. I guess it's up to the leaders in our team to really pull everyone together and get them up to scratch in terms of being a team again and pushing forward for our season.
There you go. There's your captaincy right there.
We like that. And Jo, do you know what? We're delighted for you guys that you are all back together, that you're able to be reunited. Before we do let you go and feed the dog, can we see it? For anyone watching this on YouTube, is the dog anywhere near?
I can't, because he's right at the other end of the house, and it would be too hard. Sorry.
Give him some Netball Nation love from us, and tell him thank you for being patient. Thank you for being patient and waiting for his tea. And Jo, thank you so much for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having me, guys.
Good luck with
Thank you. Stay safe. Good luck. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Now, Sarah, obviously with Stacey now in Australia playing Super Netball until November, does this affect your wedding plans that we've heard so much about?
It does, yeah.
Well, what's the crack there?
Well, I don't think Super Netball really took our wedding into account, if I'm being honest.
Selfish.
Rude.
Yeah. But so, what is the situation? What's going to happen? Is it getting cancelled?
We're going to move it. Yeah. So that's this week's job.
God,
yeah, I know. We've heard so much. So much of this happening. But for you, Sarah, because obviously that's devastating. It's something you work up to for ages. How are you both feeling?
To be honest, we've been all right. I think. I mean, obviously it's difficult, but I think when it's kind of put into perspective with everything else that's going on, it's not the end of the world, is it? It's still going to happen. I mean, the good thing is Stacey gets to play a season. We'll still get married. It just means, probably more PowerPoints and emails,
which we know you love. So you're really happy about
always,
that, aren't you?
Yeah. Keep them coming.
But it's not an easy thing to have to do, and it's good that you're looking for the positives in it. But does that mean then that we here at Netball Nation are in for basically another year of hearing updates on it?
Well, I don't know. It depends when we can move it to. I mean, I don't want to drag it out and talk to you guys. So yeah, it depends. It depends when we can move it to. It's a bit of a logistical jigsaw with when we're both in the same place, and leagues and pre-seasons and venues and things like that. So we're going to try and move it. I mean, the likelihood is we might have had to move it anyway with restrictions and things like that. So it's just kind of giving us a kick up the backside of making a decision. But yeah, we'll as soon as I've got a date, I will I probably won't let you know, but
No, I was going to say you never will. But me and Mags will offer our wedding suggestions anyway. We'll be expecting donkeys there on your wedding day and all sorts again. Okay, yeah. So we look forward to that, don't we, Mags?
We absolutely do.
Now, obviously, we've just heard from Jo, who did say, with regards to the Super League being scrapped for 2020, was it maybe a bit too soon? We've had about a week to let that news sink in. How are you both feeling about that now?
I think I'm pretty much the same. I'm kind of over it now because it doesn't affect me like it affects people like Sarah. I'm absolutely devastated for all the franchises, for all the fans. And what can you say to make it any better for anybody? You kind of have this week to let it sink in and think, well, could we have even got a season in? There's no way, because with our season starting again in February, it would have kind of been like back to back, and that just wouldn't work. And then you've got the contracts. Again, Sarah can maybe explain a little bit more about that. Contracts run out in July. Could you extend them? Could you afford to extend them? And, your overseas players, would they have stayed? Would they say, I'm going home? There's just so many different facets to it. And even though I wanted to see some form of netball played, even if it was like, a short season, realistically, I just don't know if it could have happened. So I'm kind of with it and accepting.
Sarah, I'm sure you'll have spoken to people in the world of netball over the last week. Do they kind of share Mag's point of view on that?
I think generally, yeah. I mean, the majority of people I've spoken to understand why the decision was made, and I think there's much more to it than it just being, we don't think we can play a season. Like Mag's alluded to the contracts, and that's one of the issues. But then also, we're now seeing, elite sport, like close contact elite sport, can come back. The Super League actually isn't classed as elite sport because it's not a professional league, so that doesn't really help the Super League. And there's all sorts of nuances around that actually I think most people within the game do understand why the decision was made and are massively disappointed. But it does get to the point where you've just got to accept it and kind of appreciate the fact that you've got some clarity of what you're doing now, rather than just kind of going on in limbo for months on end.
Yeah, I mean, we know that one of the concerns was the financial hit that it would take, and we've seen some Super League clubs have already tried to take steps to recoup the money they're going to lose. So Manchester Thunder, for example, have asked for fans to forego refunds for tickets. Mavericks have set up a donation page to raise 50k. What are both your thoughts on that? And do you think franchises can survive such a financial hit?
I think hats off to Mavericks for being so open and transparent about their personal situation. I mean, how difficult must it have been for them to even go down that route of having to crowdfund to try and raise 50k for themselves, which still, covers very little within the franchise. I think it's sad that that's what it's come to, that they're having to resort to that. But I'm sure the Mavericks fans will get behind their team and they will dig deep and they will help them out. And the initiative that Thunder have taken with the your team needs you, like the old rousing cheer that used to come through the wartime. The Manchester fans are pretty sincere and pretty loyal. They may well just forego the refund of their tickets, the season tickets, and just give it back to them. Mm-hmm. And it's just these, how inventive can you be with your fans to keep your money in the bank where it is already without having to give it back?
Yeah, and also to keep people happy, because it's a tough balance to strike. But Sarah, can you see any teams not returning in 2021 as a result of this?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the Mavericks one's interesting because I think it comes back to what we speak a lot about on this in terms of the profile or lack of women's sport. I mean, they're part owned by Saracens. Now, you can't tell me that Saracens, who break the salary cap in rugby union by a mile, then can't afford to keep a Super League team running in the scale of things. And I know rugby's been hit as well, but on the priority list of Saracens, netball is obviously so far down that you've got a team with the pedigree of Mavericks that's been in there since day one of Super League, has won the title, and they're struggling. So I think, teams will struggle to survive, and I think it won't just be the likes of Mavericks and Thunder. It'll be numerous teams that are struggling to survive and are trying to work out what do we do in this time frame now between here and February when we're due to start the new season. How do we make sure that we've got enough money to fund this season?
It's just really sad, isn't it, that?
It is sad.
Yeah.
It is sad. Yeah.
I tell you what it is, it's sad when you've got your sport and culture minister saying that, they want to keep this momentum behind female sport rolling. And yet, it's all right saying that, words are cheap. When, would we have a valid argument going to the government and going to him and saying, this is our top flight sport for females, within our world of netball, what are you going to do to try and help us stay afloat through this? Sarah alluded to last week that, with it being part of the university, her franchise, that they get allocated a set amount of money, and every year they will get that money. I'm sure, they have targets like everybody else, but they know that to an extent that they are probably going to be just okay, but we'll have to work a little bit harder in, maybe sales and things, ticket sales next season. So the few franchises that still align to universities might be okay. But, imagine if 4 teams dropped out.
But I think even for the likes of us and Bath, who are aligned to universities have taken such a massive hit now that we're kind of waiting on budgets for next year. And like you saw at Northumbria, universities can also turn around and go, do you know what, this is too rich for our blood. We've had enough. And I think that's the precarious position of netball generally, whatever the ownership model, whether it's university, whether it's a standalone franchise, whether you've got a major backer, regardless,
it's
I think
fragile,
teams are worried.
Times like this, it's fragile for everybody, I suppose.
Do you think it could change the way the competition looks?
Well, I think we spoke last week with Tamsin about there being a need for someone to grab hold of this league and kind of, drive it forward and decide what you want. So what do you want from this league? From if England Netball own it, what is the aim of it? Is it to be the biggest commercial league? Is it to produce England players, which was the initial aim? Are you going to continue to let franchises kind of dictate what their own aims are? Because our aims, I'm sure, are probably different to Siren's aims in this league, which will be different again to Dragons, which will be different to Thunder. You've got no common ground with a lot of franchises. So it might change how the league looks, but I think that's not going to be necessarily a proactive change. It's going to be a response to teams going under at this rate.
It's such a shame. It's something that we will be across here on Netball Nation. So the more that we find out, the more we will share with you. You mentioned, Sarah, about it not being classed as an elite sport, but obviously we've heard about close contact training being allowed for elite sports. Does that mean then are you exempt from that? How does it look for you in terms of training?
Well, it means the England girls can get into training facilities and train in sort of 1s and 2s, but for Super League it doesn't really mean anything.
So you can't train in 1s, 2s, nothing?
No.
So what are you waiting on from the government then? Are you waiting on them to say from grassroots level up you are allowed to train with up to 6 people, or what is it that you're waiting for?
Well, it's a combination. It's a combination of that, and for me in my particular scenario, we're waiting on facilities to open at Loughborough. So some facilities have opened at Loughborough because it's an elite training centre. So the likes of the swimming pool and the athletics track have opened because you've got British swimming and British athletics with potential Olympians going back to train. I know we have fought quite hard to get netball sort of considered within that, but now, especially now that the league has been cancelled, that priority isn't very high. So, I don't know when we'll be back training, to be honest with you. Like I said, the England girls can get into some facilities now and train, but I think from a Super League perspective, we're not really expecting anything until late summer.
And how do you feel about that?
I mean, on one hand, it doesn't matter as much now that the league's not happening. You know, you're going to have a massive pre-season as it is, because the next kind of big thing for Super League is February. But for a lot of players, especially people with like under 21s aspirations and people who Super League is their main competition, you do want to get in and do some training and give them something. I mean, it remains to be seen what's happening with national clubs and whether that'll start in September or not. But otherwise, if we don't get in, it's March till God knows when. Like, it's probably like an 8 month break that someone's had of not doing anything.
I mean, Mags, it doesn't take a genius to work out. It's not very motivating, that, is it?
No, it's not. And when you try to throw that word around and say, let's keep motivated, let's be positive, you know, it's really difficult, because there were so many competitions for like my juniors coming up, and it almost feels like, well, what's this year been for? It's been for nothing. They've worked really, really hard. You know, they've gone out and done the hard yards in winning locally and then, you know, winning regionally for nothing. And it's quite sad, because like some of the youngsters are moving up in an age group, and they've missed out on like the competition that should have been theirs. You know, hopefully, you know, a damn good chance of getting top 3 in the country, and they'll never get that time back again. What can we do? Nothing. It's nothing that any one of us can do, but the impact has been huge.
I mean, Sarah, there could still be a bit of celebration for you though this summer, because your team, Liverpool, they're on track. They're on track to lift the trophy, but you know, that doesn't mean that you're going to be there to see it happen. Obviously, it's a different sport, but we've heard so much in the media over the last few days talking about, you know, playing certain games at different venues because they're worried about fans turning up and congregating at the ground, etc. And we know, I mean, they're going to win the title, obviously. But how does that feel as a fan that you won't be there? There won't be lifting the trophy. There won't be any of that celebration with the fans.
It is sad, because can you imagine the party that would have been when Liverpool won it? Oh my word.
Best party there never was.
You know, it makes me sad, but I'm so happy we're playing it, because a load of my friends are City fans, and will they shut up? I'm like, oh, you can't just give it to you. There'd be a big asterisk, like you wouldn't have actually won the league. Like, oh my God, shut up, because now we're going to win it. And even though there's no celebration, I will just be calling them up, having my own celebration. So yeah, I mean, it is sad, and it's been a long wait, hasn't it, for Liverpool fans to win this league again. So it's sad that there's going to be no celebration, but you've got to make the best of it. And the positive is that it's going to get played, it's going to get finished. We will win the league. So you've got to take that and not have all these Manchester City fans, in particular, Man United fans, going on and on and on about how, you know, you might have slipped up in all 9 games.
Well, do you know what, Sarah? If we do a Netball Nation very shortly after it's happened, then we'll all bring a little drink of something and we'll do a little cheers.
Oh, with our Liverpool shirts.
Yeah, no.
No.
Just you. We'll bring the drink. You go in your shirt. I don't know what this is. This is me cheersing. I don't know why I needed to do it so many times. Right then, moving on. to our last segment. This is a really, really lovely message that we've had from Chelsea at Swifts Junior Netball Club. Now, Chelsea says, "Hi guys, I just wanted to drop you a little thank you message. I'm not the soppy type, but I started listening to your podcast at the start of lockdown, so I had something random to listen to on my daily walks. I've now caught up on all season 1 and 2, and I wanted to let you know how much they've meant to me as a netballer, coach, umpire, tutor, and all-round lover of netball. Your podcasts have been upbeat, insightful, and really kept me in my little netball world. I've got a lot of girls in my junior and senior clubs who look up to me to keep their netball going during all this, and a lot of my motivation has come from listening to you guys. Thanks to Max, I've also started a little Tuesday treat, which isn't so good for my waistline, but love it all the same. Thank you so much, and can't wait to keep listening." Chelsea. How lovely is that?
So nice.
Smart lady. Fabulous. Thanks, Chelsea.
Because do you know what? It's very easy for us when we sit here, you know, and we're having a chat and we know that we're speaking to you, but we don't see you. You know, we don't see you listeners. So it's really, really nice. And always, please do get in touch. If you've got any questions or anything, please do get in touch with us and we'll try our best to cover it on next week's episode. But do either of you have any suggestions of drills or coaches, of drills that coaches like Chelsea can do with her younger players that they can take in part in sort of remotely or with their friends during a weird time like this, Max?
I think the ones when you're working in isolation, for as much as it sounds a little bit dry, it's your ball and wall. Jo mentioned it before as well. There's so much you can do with the ball if you have access to a wall. I know some people don't. Or, you know, just a few cones. And if you don't have cones, you can just use, you know, little areas on the floor, maybe use some chalk to draw some little lines randomly on the floor. So you can do footwork drills. You can do ball and wall, you know, the left-handed, the right-hand throws. And as Jo said, the more you give the more the wall will give to you. So the harder you can hit that wall with the ball, the faster it comes back at you. Targets, draw targets on a wall. If you can't use a bit of chalk to do that, you know, pick a random brick on the wall and just use that for target practice. Start with your back to the wall, drop the ball, turn, and then do your target practice again, or do your left and your right. Chest passes, overheads. If you're lucky enough to have somebody that can train with you from your household, you know, you can do some movement drills as well, which incorporate the footwork and the using cones and using the wall. So it's getting really creative with just a ball and a wall, or if you don't want to use a netball, you could use something like a tennis ball, change it up a little bit, because that is different for your reactions as well.
Well, do you know what, Sarah? I was going to ask you as well, but I feel like Max has given us such an extensive list there. She's probably covered it all, hasn't she?
Yeah, and I mean,
yes.
if you really want to work hard, get your mum or someone to feed, because it'll go all over the place.
top tip from Sarah there.
Right.
and on the topic of parents, something slightly more serious that I want to cover and that is really important to cover. Supporting parents, you know, it's their role to support their children through sport, and racism is a huge topic of discussion in society at the moment following the death of a black man called George Floyd in police custody in America. Now, a number of high-profile sports stars, including netballers, have spoken out about the issue. How important is it that netball has a voice with things like this?
I think it's essential, and I mean, to be fair, I think we as a team were pretty slow with coming out with anything on this, and you know, that's on us. But it's so important that it's something we talk about and we acknowledge is happening within and outside of our sport. And I think for me on this topic, it's been, I have put some stuff online, but it's actually been more about taking time to educate myself around it and not think that I know what I don't, because it's not, like, you know, it's not my experience. It's not a topic I know a huge amount about. So I'd rather go away and read some books and read some information and educate myself, and then have conversations with my family and my friends and people like that about it, and make sure that I'm coming from a place of being informed. But yeah, as a sport, I think we need to make sure that, you know, it's something that people understand. You know, we are completely anti-racism, and it's not going to be tolerated within netball.
Absolutely. And sport, just like society, is all about inclusion and equality. Max, what advice do you have for young black players who might face discrimination on the court?
Um, do you know, just the mention of this subject, I can feel myself feeling a little bit like tight across the chest. Because when you've experienced this kind of ignorance, it hurts. So you'd like to think in 2020 that anybody who experiences any form of exclusion because of the colour, that they would feel brave enough to speak up or to speak to somebody. The reality of the situation is that when they are young, it's difficult for them. And even when you're not young, you are fearful of speaking out because of the fear of your peers who may be a little bit older would say that you've got a chip on your shoulder and, you know, you're not a team player and just get on with it, it'll be fine. But it isn't fine. And most people find a way of working through it. What I would like to say is it is very, very, very rare within netball. That's my experience. Yeah, there have been teams of black girls who play locally, just, you know, grassroots level netball, who have been excluded from leagues because they are deemed to be a little bit too feisty, their language is a little bit too colourful, and they're classed as being aggressive. And you've got umpires who won't umpire those games because, you know, in some respects, sometimes, you know, the girls are a little bit offside with the umpires. But then you say it's like an education for the umpires as to how to deal with that situation because they just feel intimidated and scared that they're going to be attacked. Quite whether that's the result of what's going to happen, I don't know. But from a personal perspective, I have experienced it maybe once or twice, way back when I was quite young. But thankfully, I'm proud to say that it has no place within any of the teams that I am aligned to, that I represent, and it absolutely is not acceptable. Lots of experience, not just with netball, but through work as well, my old work as well. That's another story for another time.
I think netball should actually be, especially in this country, proud of the diversity it has. You know, you look at pretty much any team in the Super League, but also the national team. I think we show more diversity than pretty much any other international team, bar one or two. And I think it's something that, you know, we should celebrate.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's not just not being racist, it's being anti-racist. It's about calling people out when you know that what they're saying or what they're doing is wrong. Mags, what would you say to anyone who has maybe had an uncomfortable experience like that and haven't felt that they can stand up for themselves?
There has to be a way, even if it's, you know, some sort of anonymous way that you can report what's happened to somebody. Because it can destroy you and it can be devastating to you. And if this is your sport and this is what you've always wanted to do, you have to find an avenue to report that fact and be brave enough to report it. You know, even if it's done anonymously, you don't even need to give a name if you don't feel as though you want to but if you're the only person of colour within that team and you're wanting to inform somebody that something's happening to you, how would they do it anonymously? It's just not possible. But they need to be able to speak out one way or another, whether they do it through a parent, whether they do it through a peer, whether they do it through a friend outside of netball, because we can't allow that into our game. And I repeat, I truly believe that it is, if it's happening, very, 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 very small pockets of it.
Yeah. And obviously, like Sarah touched on, myself and Sarah can't pretend to understand because we have what is considered white privilege. But Mags, have you ever felt that you've had to work harder to get to where you are?
No, I'm going to say, thankfully, this sport has given me so much. You know, I cannot cannot thank netball enough for giving me the experiences and the opportunities that I've had. You know, I've seen the world playing netball, and that has been as a consequence of ability and not colour.
Do you know what? That is, you know, exactly the answer we want, because that shows that netball as a sport is doing something right, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely agree.
That is amazing. Well, Mags, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, before we wrap this up, this has been a really good one. I feel like we've covered basically everything in this
I'm really
podcast.
surprised about it.
Yeah.
It's actually been all right.
We got to number 13 and got something useful out of it. Now, before we wrap it up, have you got any shout-outs you'd like to do, guys?
Ooh. Go on, Sarah. I usually say I haven't got anything, and then you sort of like, I think, oh yeah, she said that. Yeah, go on.
Well, we were talking to Jo earlier, saying that Kim Green has just announced her pregnancy, so congratulations to Kim and her husband Ben.
Congrats.
Let's see how this one plays out after what we've been talking about, to see if she's able to come back.
Well, I mean, she's retired anyway, hasn't she? So, God, surely not. Living the dream of retired life. And then, I think that's it from me.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Mags, have you got any shout-outs?
Just come on, government. Let's move this on a little bit further so that we can have bigger groups than 6 together. And, you know, good luck to the teachers who have gone back to school with some of the kids. I think it was Monday or Tuesday of this week. I know there's a lot of apprehension around it, and people wondering how we're going to keep these kids socially safe within that environment. But best of luck to your teachers. You've been doing and do a fabulous job, and let's just hope that it's manageable for you.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much to our teachers and all of our key workers. Thank you, Sarah and Mags, as always. And thank you for listening. Remember, get in touch with any questions that you might have for Sarah or Mags, and we will try and cover them on next week's podcast. Now then, just a reminder, another congratulations to Layla Callahan from Hyde Park Netball Club on winning those amazing A6 professional double F black netball shoes for her and her whole team. Well done, Layla.
Well done, Layla.
Yes. You're up there with Mags and Sarah now. Have a good week, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
This is Netball Nation.